my goodness, this is so amazing.
Your team could have ideas that you don't have.
Help me fix that. You've got 2 weeks. Give me a solution. Let's roll.
I'm going to do this, 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 and we're going to do this. Recording in progress. Hello, friends. I am Stephen Harrington Dakota here with my friends, Mr. Heath Sharon and Therese Potter. And today we are going to be talking about how to manage an insurance agency team, which is a guide for new managers or team leads. So guys, you want to take a second and introduce yourself?
I am the Mayor Heath Sharon, and second generation insurance professional, former agency owner, former carrier rep, now consultant and podcast host. So love this industry. Not just like it, but I love it. And I look forward to hanging out with y'all for the next 20 or 30 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks, Heath. I am Therese Potter, about 15 years in insurance, operations, sales, service, you name it. I've done it, managed. I've even done marketing. I also have a teaching degree. I'm also bilingual. I lived in Guatemala 12 years. So I'm kind of using all those tricks and tips and my skills to use it for APP and consulting, and I love it.
Perfect. And I again am Stephen Harrington Dakota, the diva of insurance. I've been in insurance a little over 20 years now. Crazy times to think about that. Started as a file clerk, worked my way into ag, and who doesn't love farm? Went into small commercial and switched to personal lines where I started focusing on just about everything. Went to another agency where I did marketing. I was the marketing manager and the personal lines director, and then all the way up to a COO where I managed the agency till they sold, and now I'm here helping other agencies be ridiculously amazing. So, who's got a tip? What do we want to talk about? Do we remember the first time? I've been a manager like all my life. Like every job I've had, I've always been like, I don't want to be just the person at the register, right? Like I want more responsibility because I knew responsibility meant more money, or at least in my head, that's what it meant. It wasn't always true, right? Sometimes there's just a whole lot more work for the same pay. But I was like, but look at me, I'm a manager. But what are some tips or tricks, or what are some struggles you guys had, if you can think back to when you were just getting into some sort of supervision or management role?
I actually worked in retail many years, became a teacher. From the teaching, became a coordinator, which is kind of like the lead. After I felt like I built myself up to that role in each place that I was at, because when I started in insurance, I started green and didn't know anything about insurance. I actually had just moved back from Guatemala. I learned from other agents and just kind of stepped up. And it's difficult when you have to manage people who are older than you. I think that one is a big one. Sometimes you have more knowledge than they do. Sometimes you're just a different kind of leader or a better leader. Leading people that are older than you is definitely a challenge. So you have to be careful in how you do it. You can't throw your weight around like you're better than everybody else. You have to manage and treat people differently. So that's the one thing that was the most difficult for me.
I think for me, as in a leadership role, it was tough to realize that other people may not care about the business as much as you do, or they may not look at it the same as you do. And so I had to get that mindset of like, I can't micromanage people to do certain things a certain way because I want them that way. I had to change my thought process, my manager's office. Does that make sense? Like, you think because you're in that role, or whether you're a manager or an owner, that the people that you're managing should care as much as you do, and they don't necessarily. And so I struggled with that a little bit.
Right. And I think like my last job, I got hired to go in and clean things up. It wasn't broken, but it was agencies bought by acquisition. They were still kind of their own little island. And the current agency manager was friends with everybody. Like he didn't want to upset anybody. He'd go to Costco and bring cookies before he'd come to the office. And be like, oh, here's your favorite candy. And everybody loved him, which was great. He had a great relationship with everybody. But there was no like necessarily like hardcore accountability. So when I came in, I was like, like we fixing this. Like, I'm sorry you don't like it. That's the way it's going to be. So it ended up, I was the opposite of the other agency manager. And so I had to go to feeling school, which I love to tell people. Like I did 6 months of caring because I had to learn how to relate to the staff in a way that wasn't just going to piss everybody off.
Anger management class.
Well, I wasn't angry. I know it's the way we're going to do it. And you're not doing it that way. So it's this way or you can go. And so I think one that was really important for me was learning to build rapport with the staff. Like what really makes them tick? What are their personality types? And then having to change myself and how I interacted with each person to get the result I needed.
Because you can't be friends with them too.
Right. Yeah. I've never, like at work, I'm not work friends. Like, I've never really believed in that. I've worked with some friends before, but it's very easy for me to be like, work is work, life is life. Like, you can be my best friend, but at work, we're coworkers. Like, whatever happens at work stays at work. We'll still go, like, even if we fight or something happens at work, we can still go out at night and have a drink or dinner together and be fine. But we need to leave work at work, and we need to leave home at home. But I think a lot of people have a really tough time with that separation.
Well, I think managers try to be friends because they want people to like them, so people will do what they say, and I think it backfires.
I definitely agree there's a fine line there. And that's one of the things I've always struggled with in my career is wanting that, have that desire to be liked or, to have that relationship. Because I'm a very relational person. I want to have that relationship with everybody. And so, I'm one of those people, like, you could be my best friend after knowing you for a month or so. I developed relationships really fast. And it can get me into trouble, Therese, going back to it. I was trying to manage people in that way. And I would expect them to do certain things because we were buddies. Hey, we just had margaritas last night, and I'm asking you to do this. Why not? Or I did this or that. We just hung out here. What? Anyhow, point being, I struggled with that as well throughout my manager career until I finally figured that out.
So I think one of the ways to look at it is if something's not being done, even though it's been trained and they know how to do it, like, how do you handle that situation? So if we're friends, it's harder for me to go to you and be like, hey, you didn't make your 10 calls today. Tomorrow that needs to happen, or we're going to go on an action plan.
Right.
If we're friends, I would be like, hey, I know you have a lot going on at home and whatever, and I know that you stubbed your toe and that you have a hangnail that's been infected, so it's hard for you to dial the phone. So maybe do you think we could try harder next week to try to make some calls?
Or on the flip side of that, they come to you and say, but Steven, we're buddies. I'm not going to make these calls.
Right.
Like, I need you to have my back. Don't get me in trouble. Don't have on me or don't do this. I'll get them next week, bro.
And I'm not saying not to be friendly or involved, right? But
no, I guess
there's a difference between being friendly at work and having it be a positive or a great place to work versus we're all best friends.
Yeah.
Well, and that also ties into the patience with everybody's learning style. As an educated teacher, I got my degree in Guatemala, and one of the things they teach you as a teacher is everybody has a different learning style. Everybody's an individual, so you can't teach a group of people or manage a group of people the exact same way. You have to treat everybody with the same management, but also sometimes you have to talk to people a little bit differently because of their learning style and how they absorb information.
My son just passed his driver's test, and it's like, oh my God. But it took him literally 5 times because he tried note cards. He tried this, he tried that, finally I was like, bro, you just got to YouTube some videos. That's how I learn. Maybe your learning style is different than your mom's or than your uncle's or somebody else has tried to study with you. And I also learned by just doing, for me personally. So I was like, son, let's just get in the car and go. I know you don't have your permit yet, but let's just go and you can learn as we go. We almost hit 7 mailboxes, but we passed the test finally. But again, going back to his learning style was completely different than his mother's, who had been studying with him the whole time. And no wonder he passed. I'm just kidding. But working with me, I helped him learn his style of learning. And so going back to that, same thing with your staff. They all learn in different ways. And that's why, again, not a plug for APP, but it is, sorry, not sorry. We have videos, we have workbooks, we have biweekly calls, we have accountability, live coaching. There's so many different things because we want to touch them all, right? So I think that's huge. I think Kelly's onto something with that as well.
Well, I know, like, even going through some of our trainings back when I was on the agency side, I would read it. Like, I would read the leadership guide, and then she'd come on and be like, okay, did you read the guide? And I'd be like, yep. And she'd be like, well, what about this, this, and this? And I was like, oh, I must have somehow missed part of that. Or, oh, oops, I didn't realize that that's what that meant. So I'm very much a, like, interaction learner. Like, I learn through interaction, not necessarily a video, because sometimes I get bored and just want to watch it really quick just to get through with it. Not necessarily by reading, but by a combination of the two. Like, I can read it and do it, work along with it, and watch a video sometimes. So everybody's a little different. I think the other important part of different styles of training for different people is also checking in as needed, right? Like, I'm somebody that if you check on me 3 times a day, we're going to have words. Like, I like to be held accountable, and I have no issues if I fail, right? Like, you told me to do it and I didn't do it. I'm going to take responsibility and make the magic happen, or the consequence that happens. Not that I want to fail, but if you need to check on me 7 times a day, we're not going to get along.
Well, and that's micromanaging. You have to be careful not to micromanage. And then that's the same thing with people's different personalities. I mean, some people want you to check in with them to keep them accountable. And some don't.
The constant check-in.
Yeah, and I think those can be done in other ways. You could also have meetings, like weekly meetings. We used to do at one of the corporations I worked for, we would have these standing meetings for like 5 or 10 minutes. Huddles, which I always hated the terminology. We're going to have a huddle, but at the same time, it worked. Instead of having to check in 50,000 times a day, you get everybody together for a quick morning huddle for about 10, 15 minutes. Hey, what's going on? It was the exact same every time we met. But we all got it out. We all got it going. And it reminded me, oh, I got these things to do today. Or Therese has this going on. Let me jump in and help her with that. And Steven's got this going on. Maybe I could help there, whatever it might be. And so I think sometimes doing weekly check-ins like that could help more than daily bugging the crap out of somebody.
We had Monday morning meetings.
Yeah.
One agency, I was there 8 years, and they were horrid. They were good because we got to check in and our numbers and stuff, but Monday morning, it was so difficult. It was so hard. So be mindful of that too. You might want to do it Tuesday morning.
That Tuesday morning meeting.
But I think also the one-on-ones. I used to not like that, but now I look forward to the one-on-one times with managers and spending time with that because like, oh, okay, this is a good time for me to check in and have that time. So if you have those scheduled, again, you don't have to walk by their desk every 45 seconds. Kind of reminds you of Office Space, but like,
I think also you need to have a vision. Like, I know that every time I took on a new role or position, I'd be like, I'm going to do this, 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 and we're going to do this. And like, you're on fire, right?
right.
Because it's new and it's exciting. You're excited for the opportunity to go and fix something or do something different. And then you get in and you're like, wah, wah. Like, oh, oopsie doodle. Like, there's more to this than I thought. So I think it's important to have a strong vision and like write it down. Like, what are the top 3 to 5 things you want to accomplish with a timeline? But I think you also have to be super flexible and bend and weave as needed and pick like one priority. Like, if this quarter, the only thing that happens is X, I've succeeded because I know there's going to be 400 little things that are going to pop up. I can't just go and turn the basket upside down and be like, look, we're now getting all new fruit. We got to get through what we have.
Well, and it's also good to have your staff have goals for themselves. The first agency I worked at, they had goals, numbers you had to meet, and I didn't like it. It frustrated me, but now being at 2 other agencies after that with no real kind of goals, it made it difficult. Now, they did have when I worked for the one for marketing, they did have goals for their staff, but I was in marketing, so I had to make my own goals. But the middle agency that I worked for did not have any goals at all. And when I tried to implement them, they really didn't jump on it. The agent didn't jump on it, so it wasn't important. But everybody having their own goals, personal and professional, is very important.
Yeah, and I think getting the staff involved in that as well, going back to one of the things, listening to what they see as successes, what they see as frustrations. Yeah, I love one of our programs, the assessment. We do that. We have the interview, we talk to the team, and we figure out what their feelings are, and then we have the issues tracker and all those kind of things to be able to hear. That helps you as a manager to build your vision because they're like, oh yeah, they're on board with that already because they express that to you and you listen to them and they feel heard.
I think one of the important things is listening to them vent or listening to their frustration, but with the understanding that that's going to come with a game plan. Right?
Yeah.
Because some people just it's a pity party every day of their life. Every day it's the Eeyore that's like, it's never going to get better. It's always going to be this way. I'm always going to be behind in my work and never get my calls done. I can never make my sales goal no matter what I do. And they just literally, it makes them feel better to like go and cry to somebody about it because they're like, well, I told you I couldn't get my sales goal and look, I didn't. So I think really listening, but then having to have some constructive criticism or a game plan come out of that conversation to where, again, it goes back to that having a vision, right? What is their vision? What do they need? How can we train them to be better in that? And How can we move them along? And we want to keep that open conversation, but know that just because they come and complain about something, it's not going to necessarily go away, or that they don't have to do it.
Or why not delegate that, as you call it, the Eeyore, with something to help that? Hey, if they come to you and complain about a situation, okay, why don't you help me figure out how to solve that problem? What do you suggest the next steps would be to fix that? Obviously, I'm not doing it right as a manager. Help me, or I'm not doing it to the way you think would be best. Help me fix that. You've got 2 weeks. Give me a solution. Let's roll.
Well, and it's important as a manager that you're positive. You celebrate everything you can possibly celebrate, even when your staff are down or negative or Eeyores. You have to be that positive role model that comes in and changes that and makes it a positive thing. So find all the positives and the negatives. You know, my internet at home doesn't work, but Teresa from our crew came back and said, "You have electricity, right?" And I was like, "Thank God I have electricity and heat," right, Heath? And not having internet is not the worst thing in the world, but when you work from home, that can be a struggle. But you got to look at the positives as look at everything else I have.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, I think that's, go ahead.
I was going to say, the one sticky note I have on my desk, because we're not allowed to have sticky notes at APP, as you all know, but I have one, and it's one I've had since before I started. And this is one of the mottos I used to use when I was managing teams. And it was, beta testers equal team buy-in. It's probably backwards because my camera angle's back.
No, it's fine.
Right?
Perfect.
It's backwards.
And your handwriting is stellar.
I love Sharpies and sticky notes. I still have the Sharpies. I don't have the sticky notes. So beta testers equal team buy-in. When somebody's the Eeyore or somebody's struggling with something, have them, like he said, what do you think the solution is, right? Great. I'm going to have you try that for 2 weeks and then come back and tell me how that works. And if it works, I'm going to have you train somebody else to do it that way too. So you don't have to necessarily take on everything yourself either. Or if you want to introduce something new, like when we were doing APP with retention calls, there's an agency I was working with, and we had 3 people on the sales team it was the sales process. We had 3 people on the sales team start the sales process while we were still in retention. And so they were used to how it ran in the management system, tracking it in the management system, doing the follow-up calls. So when it came to launch day for sales, 3 of the salespeople were like, "Oh my goodness, this is so amazing. Here's my new closing ratios. Here's how this is working. I love the breakup letter." And I had 3 little cheerleaders for the team. The rest of the team's like, "We just did retention calls. Now you want us to do a sales process?" And we're like, "You're literally already doing the sales process. It's just a different way of looking at it and tracking it." And the sales team's like, and then I got this other account, and then I did 3 policies, and then. So I think it's really important too, when you want to try something or introduce something new too, you don't have to do it alone, right? Find the person that's really good at that on your team as well and get them to try it out. And then if it's working, great. Have them be one of the cheerleaders that presents it with the team.
Right. Always include your team, because your team could have ideas that you don't have. So use their ideas as well if they have good ones. And some of them do. You just have to ask.
So we have just a couple minutes left, and I want to close with 2 thoughts. We've kind of already gone over all of these, but I think coffee chats, as I like to call them, are really important. Just a weekly or every other week one-on-one with each person on the team. I used to do 30 minutes. I had a team of 25 plus people. So I did it once a month. The team leads for each department did every week or every other week, depending on the team size. But what they really got out of that was they found out where the person was at mentally and at work. They got to know what they were struggling with. We could address things as they were happening and not wait for a month or a 3-month review or a 6-month review and be like, "Oh, you didn't do anything you said this quarter," right? It was like accountability on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And it just really helped to build that relationship, because they had to come prepared to when they met with me, they had to tell me what was on the agenda. It had to be something they were doing well, something they were struggling with, and something they wanted to learn. It was 3 things: a success, a challenge, and something new. And we would talk through that, but they had to give it to me a week before so that I could be prepared as well. So I think that then they also feel like they're being heard and invested in. And I learned a lot by doing those as well. You guys have any other closing thoughts?
I think it's great. Keeping in touch with your staff, touching base with them, understanding their weaknesses, their challenges, their strengths. It just makes for a better team.
I would just say the last thing for me on being a good manager, just don't be a jerk. You can be a good manager without being a jerk. I mean, you can consider their feelings and be, accountable to help them be accountable at the same time. You don't have to be.
You don't have to rule with an iron fist.
I'm trying not to say bad words. You can do it. Just be mindful of their thoughts, but also understanding the goals and the mission of the agency.
Well, guys, we have lots of tools to help you out as well. We have our online school seats, which you can use to virtually train your team yourself. We have virtual training, live training. We have process packs. We have all kinds of things to help you out. So make sure you check out our website and all that we have to offer, or call either Therese, Heath, or I, and we'll be happy to come up with an individual training plan with you. Until we talk next time, we'll see you soon, guys. Bye-bye.